She sat in silence, a brightly decorated room surrounding her, but not a single voice sang, "Happy birthday." The daughter of a wealthy CEO, bound to a wheelchair, watched the candles flicker on a cake no one came to share. Outside, whispers of her condition and her family's status kept people away. Alone, she wondered if the world had already forgotten her. But then, from the most unexpected place, a boy stepped forward, a boy society often overlooked. What he did next changed everything. Will you dare to witness it? It was meant to be a day of celebration. Balloons filled the grand hall, tables sparkled with silverware, and the cake stood tall, covered in layers of cream and candles waiting to be lit. For the CEO's daughter, this day was supposed to be different. She had dreamed of it all week, imagining laughter, friends, and voices that would make her feel like she truly belonged. But behind the decorations was a silence that grew heavier with each passing minute. Born with a condition that left her unable to walk, she had often been seen as fragile, different, even unworthy of friendship by those around her. Her father's wealth could buy her comfort, but not acceptance. At school, children whispered. At gatherings, parents kept their kids away. And now, on the day meant to bring joy, she sat in her wheelchair, staring at the empty seats around her. Still, she waited. She believed someone would walk through the door, that kindness would outweigh prejudice. Yet the longer the hall remained empty, the sharper the truth became. What she didn't know was that this loneliness would soon be shattered, not by those she expected, but by someone the world often ignored. Someone who carried his own burden of prejudice every day. And his choice would change everything. The candles on the cake had long since melted into wax, their smoke drifting upward like forgotten prayers. In that vast hall, decorated with glittering chandeliers and golden drapes, the silence was deafening. The CEO's daughter, small, fragile, and bound to her wheelchair, sat with her hands folded in her lap, her dress shimmering under the lights. She looked like a princess without a kingdom, a child celebrated only in theory but abandoned in reality. Her father had spared no expense. The invitations had gone out weeks in advance. Dozens of classmates were expected. Entertainment was booked, food was prepared, and photographers stood ready to capture memories that never came to be. Yet, when the doors opened that morning, no footsteps echoed in. No laughter filled the air. Instead, excuses arrived, text messages from parents claiming sudden illnesses, last-minute trips, or other obligations. But the truth was clear. They didn't want their children sitting beside a girl in a wheelchair. They didn't want to explain why she couldn't run, why she couldn't play, why her presence might remind them of a life less perfect than their own. Each empty chair carved deeper into her heart. She tried to stay hopeful, glancing at the doorway every few minutes, her imagination clinging to the possibility that someone, anyone, would appear. But hope is a fragile thing, and by the time the sun began to dip, that hope was slipping away. And then, he came. At first, no one noticed. The staff bustled in the background, whispering about how awkward the event had become, quietly removing plates of untouched food. But near the entrance, a boy lingered. His clothes were simple, a little worn. His skin marked him as different in a crowd that had always judged him before he even spoke. He was not one of her classmates, not part of her world of wealth and privilege. Yet, in his eyes, there was something she had not seen all day, recognition. He stepped forward, slowly at first, as though testing whether he even belonged in the room. The guards near the door stiffened. Some of the staff exchanged glances. But he didn't stop. He looked at her, and in that silence, something unspoken passed between them. She wasn't invisible to him. She wasn't a burden, or a condition, or a shadow. She was simply a girl who deserved not to be alone. When he reached her, he spoke quietly. The words were simple, but they cut through the suffocating air. "Can I sit with you?" Her eyes widened. For the first time that day, her lips curled into a faint smile. She nodded. And in that small exchange, something shifted. But not everyone saw it as a gesture of kindness. Across the hall, the CEO's associates whispered. Their expressions hardened. The presence of this boy, black, poor, and uninvited, was an intrusion. Some staff muttered about how inappropriate it was. A few even stepped forward to escort him out, insisting the event was private. But before they could, the girl's voice, soft yet steady, cut through. She wanted him to stay. And for once, her request was not ignored. He stayed. What began as one seat-filled soon turned into something more. He sang the birthday song, off-key but heartfelt. He clapped for her when she blew out the last flickering candles, even though no one else bothered. He told her the cake looked too beautiful to eat, which made her laugh for the first time all day. For a brief moment, the loneliness lifted, replaced by the warmth of genuine connection. But the weight of prejudice does not disappear easily. Word spread quickly beyond the hall. Parents who had kept their children away now whispered with disdain. Not only was the CEO's daughter different, but now she was being seen with someone who didn't belong. Some questioned how a child from the streets, a black boy with no invitation, had even entered the mansion. Others saw it as a stain on the family's reputation. The daughter of a CEO, they murmured, reduced to needing company like his? And though the girl didn't hear these words, the boy did. Every sideways glance, every hushed whisper, every disapproving shake of the head cut into him like glass. He had grown up with these looks, these quiet reminders that his skin, his background, his very presence was something to be tolerated at best and rejected at worst. Yet here, in front of the lonely girl, he made a choice. He stayed, despite it all. Still, the tension grew heavier. When the CEO himself arrived later that evening, his expression froze at the sight before him, his daughter smiling, not because of the expensive gifts or elaborate party, but because of this boy. The room waited, hushed, for his reaction. Would he order the boy out? Would he see the same intrusion everyone else saw? The CEO's silence was long enough to make the boy's heart pound. He stood ready to leave, knowing what rejection felt like, bracing himself for it again. But then, unexpectedly, the girl spoke, her small hand gripping the boy's sleeve. She didn't need to say much. Her eyes told her father everything. Don't take this away from me. And for a fleeting moment, the CEO faltered. He didn't dismiss the boy. He didn't demand an explanation. He simply nodded, though his eyes carried the weight of conflict, between his world's expectations and his daughter's fragile happiness. But outside the mansion, the story was already being twisted. Rumors spread through the community, stories exaggerated, prejudices magnified. To some, it was scandalous, a powerful man's daughter reduced to celebrating with someone like him. To others, it was shameful, a black boy daring to cross the invisible line society had drawn. The boy didn't know the storm was growing, not yet. All he knew was the laughter he had given her, the brief joy that replaced her loneliness. But soon, that joy would be tested. Because when people feel their prejudices threatened, they don't stay silent for long. The night had ended with smiles, but outside those mansion doors, resentment was brewing. Whispers turned into accusations, and accusations into action. What began as one act of kindness was about to ignite a fire that neither the boy nor the girl could have imagined. And when that fire came, it would expose truths far darker than an empty birthday hall. The morning after the birthday, the mansion no longer felt like a safe place. What had begun as a quiet act of kindness, a boy sitting with a lonely girl, had now become the center of a storm. By sunrise, the whispers had spread through the city like wildfire. The story twisted with every retelling. The CEO's paralyzed daughter, desperate for attention, sat with a boy who didn't belong. Some added venom. A black boy, from the wrong side of town, sneaked into the mansion. Others called it an embarrassment, a stain on the family's image. And it wasn't just whispers anymore. Articles appeared online, blogs fueled by scandal, headlines dripping with judgment. Cameras began circling the estate gates. The world, it seemed, was less concerned with the child's loneliness than with the color of the hand that reached out to comfort her. The boy, unaware of the growing storm, went about his day as usual. His home was small, tucked into a neighborhood where broken sidewalks and peeling paint told the story of a community left behind. But that day, people watched him differently. Neighbors looked with unease. Strangers muttered under their breath. And when he walked past the corner store, he caught words meant to sting. Think you belong with them now? Think you're special? He was used to being overlooked. But now he wasn't invisible, he was a target. Meanwhile, the CEO's daughter sat by her window, replaying the memory of the boy's presence. For one brief day, he had made her feel normal, loved, seen. She clutched a small keepsake he had given her, a folded paper star, crumpled at the edges yet shining in her eyes. It was the only gift that mattered. But as she looked outside, she saw reporters gathering, cameras flashing. She heard the murmurs from staff about how her friend had caused a scandal. And for the first time, she realized that the world might try to take away the one piece of happiness she had found. The storm reached its peak when the CEO was called to address it publicly. Business partners threatened to withdraw support. Investors demanded explanations. To them, the boy was not a symbol of kindness, he was a liability, a headline, a controversy. Distance yourself, they advised. Make it clear he has nothing to do with your family. And so, under pressure, the CEO made a choice that would change everything. That evening, the boy was walking home when the flashing lights of police cars stopped him cold. Sirens wailed as uniformed officers stepped out, hands hovering over their holsters. Hey, you! Stop right there! The boy froze. His heart raced, pounding in his ears. He hadn't done anything, he knew that. But he also knew the stories. He had seen what happened to others who looked like him, who didn't move the way the officers wanted, who spoke too quickly or not quickly enough. He raised his hands slowly, his voice trembling as he tried to explain, he had only been at a birthday. He had done nothing wrong. But the officers weren't listening. Someone had called him a trespasser. Someone had said he broke into the mansion. The kindness he had shown was now painted as a crime. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks, phones recording. Some shouted for the officers to let him go. Others muttered that he brought it on himself. The boy stood surrounded, fear choking him, every second stretching longer than the last. And then, through the crowd, a voice pierced the chaos. It was her. The CEO's daughter, fragile but determined, had been wheeled to the edge of the mansion gates by a caregiver who couldn't stop her in time. Her small voice carried across the sirens, he's my friend. He didn't do anything. The crowd fell silent. The officers hesitated. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. A child's innocence clashed against the weight of prejudice. The boy, trembling, locked eyes with her. And in that instant, something inside him refused to break. But prejudice doesn't vanish in silence. One officer stepped closer, insisting they had orders to remove him. Another muttered about protocol. And as the boy stood on the edge of handcuffs, the CEO himself arrived. Cameras surged forward, reporters shouting questions. His presence commanded the moment, but also demanded an answer. Would he stand by his daughter's truth, or by the world's expectations? The boy's chest heaved as he waited. His future hung in the balance, not because of what he had done, but because of who he was. He had come only to share kindness, but now he stood branded as a threat. The CEO looked at the boy, then at his daughter clutching that fragile paper star. Her eyes pleaded, not with power, not with status, but with love, the kind only a child can show. And in that moment, the world watched. The father's silence was heavy. The cameras clicked like ticking clocks. The boy's heart pounded, his body rigid, waiting for the verdict of a society that had always seen his skin before his soul. And then, the CEO stepped forward, opened his mouth to speak, and the entire crowd leaned in. The boy's future, the girl's happiness, and the weight of prejudice all balanced on the next words. What he said next would not just decide the fate of two children, it would expose whether compassion could triumph over racism in a world built to divide. The world waited as the CEO's voice cut through the chaos. Cameras, officers, neighbors, all leaned forward, bracing for a decision that would echo far beyond the mansion gates. And then, in a single breath, he chose. He declared the boy innocent. He told the officers to stand down, making it clear that his daughter's truth was stronger than the lies whispered by society. The boy was not a trespasser. He was not a threat. He was a guest, her only friend. The crowd stirred. Some applauded. Others shook their heads. But in that moment, it no longer mattered. For once, prejudice had been interrupted, not erased, not defeated forever, but stopped, even if only for a moment. The boy was free. Yet freedom does not erase scars. That night, as he walked home, the flashing lights and hostile stares lingered in his memory. He had not forgotten the fear in the officers' eyes, the way their hands hovered over their weapons as if kindness were dangerous. He had not forgotten the whispers of neighbors who still saw him as less. But he also remembered her, the girl who refused to let him disappear into silence. And she, too, carried something forward. For the first time, she had seen her father choose compassion over image. She had seen a friend stand beside her when no one else would. The paper star he gave her remained by her bed, not as a decoration, but as a reminder that even in the loneliest moments, one act of courage could shatter the walls built by fear. But what about the rest of us? This story is not just about a boy and a girl or a birthday forgotten. It is about the world we live in, a world where kindness can be mistaken for trespass, where skin color can turn innocence into suspicion, where wealth and status often shield some while condemning others. It is about the walls we build, the invitations we never send, and the voices we choose not to hear. The truth is uncomfortable, but it must be faced. What happened to that boy could happen anywhere, to anyone who looks like him. His story is not rare. It echoes in classrooms where children are excluded, in neighborhoods where police sirens mean fear instead of safety, in boardrooms where opportunity is measured not by talent but by skin. So the question is not whether this story matters. The question is, what will we do with it? Will we shrug it off as just another tale? Or will we let it remind us that racism is not an issue of the past, but of the present? That silence only feeds it, and action is the only cure. One boy changed everything for one lonely girl. Imagine what we could change if we all chose compassion over prejudice. The candles from her cake have long since burned out. But maybe, if we're willing, their smoke can light a fire in us all. So I leave you with this. When the next moment comes, when you see injustice, will you look away, or will you be the one who changes everything?